I'm a young person, and I wanted to take this opportunity to come and speak to you today about youth participation in high-level decision-making. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Really? We seem to talk about this all the time, and if young people wanted to get involved, they could. But really, this is an issue that's close to my heart, and I reckon if we change the way we engage with young people on the issues that really matter in our community, we could solve a whole lot of issues. I'm quite immersed in the youth world, and if I had $1 for every time I heard disengaged youth or apathetic, I would be on my own private island right now and not in here. Now, I guess it's a really important conversation for me because for all of the media that we see about young people, you know, the big scary groups of youths just tearing up town, there are so many young people making really positive contributions to our community every day. In the last measure of social participation by the ABS, it was shown that over a quarter of young people aged 18 to 24 had been engaged in some kind of volunteering activity, which is pretty huge. And responses to the Australian Youth Forum topic on volunteering showed that we're volunteering for many of the same reasons as people in other age groups, which is important because I would argue that we don't have an equal voice in the community. In the 2011 Mission Australia survey of young Australians, young people identified the economy and financial matters, the environment, and alcohol and other drugs as the issues of biggest concern to Australia. It doesn't sound like apathy to me. Now let's get some background here. Young people make up 1/5 of the Australian population, and of the Territory's about 225,000 people, about 47,000 aged between 10 and 24 years of age. And we have the youngest average age of any state or territory in the country, so 31.2 years. So when you think about the fact that about half of our population is under the age of 30, it really puts a different spin on things, doesn't it? So I just want to define what I mean by high-level decision-making. I mean the participation by young people in activities that allow our voices to be heard by those who are making decisions that affect all of our lives. So not just parents, not just employees, not just the elderly, but all of us. Because when you take the youth out of youth participation, you're left with the one right that most other demographics are afforded, the right to be heard, to be represented, and to participate. So I just wanted to have a look at some of the reasons that are given for why it's so difficult to engage young Territorians. And when 45% of Territorians live in either remote or very remote areas, it's understandable that distance is seen as a barrier to engagement. Now, some of the other reasons that we hear quite regularly are also dis words. So disinterested, disenfranchised, disengaged, disadvantaged. Are these reasons enough to stop us from allowing young people to meaningfully participate in decisions that affect their lives, or are we simply dissing young people? You see what I did there? I wanted to concentrate for a second on the reason of distance. Now, I'm not some Gen Y, social media is going to save the world type, but my parents might disagree with that. And it might. But let's acknowledge for a second here that there are many organisations and services that are truly missing the social media train. You can't expect young people to come to you quite often. You have to go to young people. And they are on social media. So consider the 47,000 young people aged 10 to 24 that I talked about earlier. Quick Facebook search, and this was a few weeks ago, so it will be a bit more than that now, told me that there were 44,000 registered users on Facebook in the NT between their sign-on age of 13 and 24. So that's a pretty huge proportion of our youth population. Doesn't take into account boundaries. So we think about urban and remote, it would be included in that. And that's just one medium. There are many other social mediums being used in the Territory, and things like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and others are really exciting for people who want to increase the participation of young people. And there's a heap of literature to support engaging young people with technology in a range of ways. Now, I just wanted to acknowledge that there are many of these social media platforms that have been used in quite negative ways in our community. And I just want to ask people to consider that if this is the one place that a young person is engaging, either positively or negatively, it's an opportunity. Now, there are a number of consultations that have occurred around the Northern Territory on a range of really important community issues. And whether or not the voices of young people were ever purposefully captured in that is questionable. I've certainly heard that a general public consultation was held and young people didn't come. And what people get from that, they generally draw a conclusion that young people weren't interested. You know, they didn't want to come along, didn't interest them. But I've also been the one young person in a room full of people talking about young people, more than once. And, you know, even for somebody like me who puts myself in those positions all the time, it's intimidating, not to mention completely mind-boggling. So, and we've got to think about how these things are publicised, you know. I mean, are they being publicised to young people in language and using mediums that we understand? Because quite often these things are being advertised on official websites, in newspapers, to service provider networks. You know, we're not doing it directly to young people. So when you consider the intimidation factor combined with that, you know, is it really any wonder that many young people won't show up to a general public consultation? And is it still reason enough for us to not try and get their views on really important community issues? So, I guess what I wanted to add is just, might be a tenuous connection here, but just before the 2010 federal election, there was about 35,000 Territorians who weren't enrolled to vote, and about 12,000 of them were in the youth bracket. So when you consider that that captures people aged 18 to 25, 12,000's really huge numbers. So I did some media at that time around the importance of enrolling to vote. I think it's extremely powerful right. And what young people have said to me then and since has made me feel that connection actually isn't so tenuous. Young people reflected to me then and since that they don't understand how the system works or who or what they're voting for. So let's cut to the chase and the how. Let's remember that one day young people will be the decision makers and the voters if they're not of voting age already. We need to understand how the system works, what our voices will be used for, and how one person, young or old, can make the biggest impact in our community. It's a beautiful thing about the Territory. So if you're trying to reach young people, go to where young people are. Now, it might mean that instead of just putting your posters up in schools, you're going to bowling alleys and cinemas and youth centres, and not discounting the online space as a place to go and reach young people. You must use all of these same spaces to go and talk to young people about the issues that really matter in our community, and rest assured that young people are interested and do want to know. Talk to us in our language. And if you don't know what that is, and it's not rocket surgery that you just ask a young person to help you. You know, there's plenty of us out there that are willing to help you. You know, it hasn't been groovy for a while. Just put it out there. I have heard that be used quite a few times. Because yeah, it's just really important that we start engaging young people in the ways that they're engaging with each other. So if I could leave you with just one thing today, it would be please don't be someone who just talks about young people. If it involves young people or affects young people, we should be a significant part of the conversation. And if you know a young person who's talking to you about local or national issues, having their say or getting involved, commend them, because empowered young people make great future leaders. Thank you.